Hello, welcome to this video lesson for CPI 111. What we're going to be doing in this lesson is to introduce a basic set of functionality and procedures that you can make use of when you are just starting out with GameMaker to create your first game. This will also serve as an introduction to what you'll need to do for the first assignment in class. So let's get going. We're going to build on an introduction that I gave in class, doing some similar things, but you need to start a new, fresh project for this. So open up GameMaker and go to New, and again, choose GameMaker Language. That's what we'll be using. Give it some name that you will remember later on. I'll call mine Clown Practice. And here we are. Okay. Now, when we were working in class, we created our own original sprite, and then we associated that sprite with an object. We got that object into the room, and then we got it to move around, bouncing off some walls. So we're going to continue on here by learning how to import existing resources, existing assets, which is really the more typical approach to creating video games in general. Is resources are created in other development projects and then brought into your game development engine. But we still need to start off by creating a sprite, so we'll create a new sprite. If you remember, you'll want to give a consistent naming scheme for all of your resources. For sprites, I'm using SPR. We're going to call this one Clown. And now before we've done edit image, remember we went in and created our own sprite, but we're going to, this time instead, we're going to import an image. And on the Blackboard site for class, I've already uploaded all of the resources that you are going to need for this project. I have to drill down so I can find them on my local computer. You'll find them in a zip file called Catch the Clown Assets. So download that zip file from Blackboard, extract it, remember where it was you put it, and then go into it now in order to bring in some of these assets or resources. We're going to bring in the clown image first. And once we bring that in, if you take a look in here, you'll see here's our little guy. And we want to do something slightly different than what we did last time. Last time we left the origin point at the upper left-hand corner of the image, which is at 0 pixels left and 0 pixels up and down. This time we want to actually move that origin point, and I'll show you why in a little bit, but for now, I'll just move it. So we're going to place it into middle center. So I'll select middle center, and you'll see it moves it right there. I can also manually move it around, and you'll see it reflected in the X and Y values that are showing through, or I can pre-select some predefined positions, and we want one of those, middle center. Another thing to look at here is up till now in what we've done in the past, we had walls in our earlier version, and when we were having our little green square collide with those walls, we were using a built-in function in GameMaker that allowed us to bounce off those walls. What was happening is that we were making use of a collision mask that was on both our green square object and on the wall objects that we created. And in fact, each time you create a sprite in GameMaker, GameMaker will automatically apply a collision mask to it. And this is just like an invisible shield surrounding your sprite that will be used by objects in your game to determine and calculate collisions between two objects. GameMaker does this automatically, but you can take a look at what it has done if you come over into the properties for this sprite and click on the collision mask down arrow. You'll see now, if we look out here, it automatically created this little collision mask around it, just covering the sprite. Sometimes you'll want to modify the size and position and shape of the collision mask. For now, we'll just keep with the one that's been automatically generated, but I just want to point out that this is what's happening behind the scenes. And also that by default, GameMaker will apply rectangular collision masks to sprites that you bring in. And they do that because rectangles are very quick in terms of calculations. They only have 4 sides. So when you're determining whether one object is colliding with another object, you only have to look at these 4 sides versus if I did something more challenging like precise, it will create a image collision mask right around the image itself, which has a whole ton of faces or edges that will have to be included and in any collision detection. So we don't want that. We want a rectangle. Okay. That's our guy. We'll leave him there. That's all we need to do with that fella for now. Let's see. So we've got that. What else do we need to do? Well, let's continue to import some other existing materials. One thing we're going to need is a wall, just like we had before. So do it yourself quickly. I'll do it quickly myself. I'm going to import the wall image. There it goes. Here too, we're going to set the origin point in the middle center, and that's all we're going to do for that one. So now I can close that up. And this is going to be a sprite, just like the other two, but it's going to serve as an image that we're going to place into the background of our room. So even though it's a sprite and it's going to work exactly the same as the other sprites, just for my own benefit, I want to remember that this is a background, so I'm going to give it a different prefix. Instead of sprite, I'll call it BG for background. And oh gosh, it doesn't really matter what you call it. Let's see if I want to match what's happening in our PowerPoint that's up on the Blackboard site. I'll call it Big Top. BG underscore Big Top. And then we'll import the background picture, bring that in. And for this one, we don't have to do anything. We don't have to change the origin point of it. It doesn't make any difference here. All right, let's bring in some sounds next. Up to this point in showing you how to import these assets, I've been bringing them in one at a time. I just want to demonstrate for you quickly that there is another way to do this. You can bring in whole collections of assets all at once, if you like. So here I've got a collection of assets. These are the Click the Clown assets, and I've got those pictures, and then I've got some sounds as well. So if I want to grab the sounds, here is a sound called bounce. Here's one called click. If I choose them both, then just click and drag and drop them into my workspace. I'll bring in music as well. They will just show up nicely, opened up, all of them in the workspace, and then we can give them names that we want. So here's a bounce sound. If I click play, you may or may not be able to hear that, but it gives a little bounce sound. We're going to call this SFX. It's going to be a sound that displays once, sound effect. And close that one down. I've got another one here that's a click sound. We'll call that SFX click. Okay. And then finally we have some background music. Maybe I'll call this MUS background. Call whatever you like. Right? We're going to make use of this in a slightly different way than our other sounds. Excellent. Okay, so now we've got our sounds all imported. Well, let's start to assemble things. Let's start off by creating a wall object. This is going to be the world's most boring object. It's not going to do anything. It'll work just the way the wall did on our previous one. So I'll create a wall object, give it the wall sprite, make it solid, and be done. The real work in this thing is going to be the player. And the player is going to need to do a bunch of things. It's going to have to bounce around off the walls. We're going to make it so that you, the player, can click on the player object to have it move around at random or seemingly at random through the room. We'll have a timer in here, and we may do one or two other things depending on how much how ambitious I get. All right, so let's create our player object. So we'll go create a new object. And we will call this one obj_clown. We'll give it our clown sprite. All right, let's put in a create event. And let's make it so it's a little easier to see what we're doing here. All right, so if you remember what we did in our previous one, we were setting the H speed to like 5 and the V speed to some value as well. We'll start off with this project doing the same thing, but now we want to choose a random value. So we're going to say H speed equals I random range, and then we'll pass it the smallest number, which will make -10, and the largest number, which will make 10. And because I'm lazy, I'm going to copy that and change H speed to V speed and leave everything else exactly the same. Okay. What else do we need to do? Well, we need to, like we did before, have this thing collide with the walls. And if you remember, it was move, bounce, solid, false, which will have us bounce off the walls, so that's all good. So let's test this thing out with the little we have so far in here. Let's come down to our room. Let's open her up. And let's rename our room here. All right. There we go. RM_big top. All right. Open her back up. And I'll let you do the adding of the walls. We've done that before. So this is going to work exactly the same way as what we did before. You just click and drag it out. Oh, look, it's complaining. Why are we complaining? Well, I'm trying to drag a sprite, which is not what we want. We want the wall. So fine, we'll drag a wall out. And remember, if you want to get a bunch of walls, you can hold down the Alt key and then just draw them out into the room. And if you make a mistake, it's no big deal because you'll be able to delete them. There we go. Select just one of these, delete that one. There we go. All right, so we've got our walls, and let's put our clown somewhere in there, and we'll hit play and make sure it all works. Here he goes. Hooray, he's bouncing around. I guess you can actually see this. Now, so far what we've been doing is putting instances of our wall object and our player object just by dragging them out from the resources, and that will automatically add them to this layer in the room, the instances layer. You can add and create your own layers in your room, which is handy as your games become more complex. And there's a special layer here called the background. And if you want to have an image for the background, you use that. So I'll choose my background, and then down below, select a sprite and choose the big top sprite. And then once I've selected that sprite, you'll see it's just placing one copy of it in the upper left-hand corner. I want to have that background showing all the way across. So I can choose to either tile it, which would look like that, or stretch it, which looks like that. If you're dealing with JPEG images and you stretch them, it will look pretty bad. But this looks pretty good. So that's fine. We'll make use of that. We can hit play again, and you'll see now we've got something that looks more like a game. Things are bouncing. That's nice. Good. One thing that doesn't look good in what we've got right now is that our guy's bouncing, but it'd be nice if he faced the direction that he was flying, and that the direction he faced was updated each time he bounces into a new direction. So let me show you how to do that. Go back into our workspace and open up our clown object in here. And there is a built-in variable, like the ones we've been using, for direction. And so if we want to make our object look a specific direction, we can make use of that built-in variable. So here we've got our h speed and our v speed. And depending on what the values are for each of these, it will send our game object off in a specific direction. And that specific direction is known by GameMaker, and we can read that direction and then make use of that direction value in order to angle our image that goes with our object the same direction that we're moving. What? Well, let me show you what I mean. So there's a built-in variable called image angle, right? Image angle will be a value between 0 and 359 degrees. 0 is going to be facing directly to the right, like the number 3 on a clock. That angle is 0. And then going counterclockwise around a circle. So looking straight up where the number 12 would be on a clock will be 90 degrees, and then straight to the left, which would be 9 o'clock, would be 180, and so on and so on. So we want our image angle to point towards the direction that the object is moving. And to do that, we can tie into yet another built-in variable called direction. Okay. Now we need to do this in a couple of different places. So I'm going to copy this. We want to do that when we create our instance, so that right when it first shows up on the screen, it's going to be facing the correct direction. And we need to have that set after we've already set the horizontal and vertical speed, since that determines the direction. If we put this beforehand, its direction would be 0, which would be facing to the right, regardless of what this is. Right? And then once we've bounced off a wall, we need to do it again, because in doing this, the direction of the object will change, so we need to update it. All right, let's take a look and see what that looks like. Ooh, fancy. Now when we bounce around, you can see it changes direction and points toward where it's supposed to be. Excellent.